I was born 2.2 miles from Jack's house. So I've known him where he lived about all my life. And we're going to get to tell some stories about how each one of us had a relationship with Jack. But I'm going to tell you a few things I want to accomplish as a goal today. One, we want to celebrate Jack's life. He was a great man. We all know that. We're going to tell some stories, horsemanship stories, some friendship stories. But the other thing, and it's so good because Jack was such a teacher, is I want us to get some things that we learned from him. And we'll share that a little bit later. But the other thing is, how do we get through the grief? And that's a part of it. You know, this is the third Saturday in a row I've done a funeral. People die every day. And we've got to learn how to get through grief because we're going to be dealing with it. One of the things I did, thank you, Debbie, for bringing that. We passed out one word that describes Jack. And here's my goal. If there happen to be somebody, there's going to be people, we're Facebook Living this, people that never met Jack. And I want them to feel like they knew him when this is over. That's my goal. That's my goal, is that, wow, he was a great man. Everybody loved him. He was a horseman. That's our goal. But one of the ways we discover what kind of person they are is how people describes them. Random people. He was humble. A storyteller. Knowledgeable. A horseman. Keep riding. Awesome. Christian. Legendary. Amazing. Passionate. Consistent. Incredible. A mentor. Generous. Knowledgeable. Love. Amazing. These are all words that different people use to describe him. A horseman. Spectacular. A legend. I don't know how many times I've had Jack come do a demonstration at our church for the last 18 years. He's done several of them. And I always said he's a legend in his own time. You know, he was a legend when he was still alive. And I don't know who wrote Yelling. You know, that was one of his students that wasn't listening, I can tell you. A Christian, patient, intuitive, inspiring, and outstanding. And I know I've got a little bit different of a relationship than most of you've got, because I never took a lesson with Jack, but he taught me a lot. But he was my friend. He came to our Bible study classes. And that's a little bit of a different relationship. And we're going to talk. I'm going to ask Debbie and Nancy to come up. They're the ringleaders of this thing. I'm just the facilitator. They're the ones that's got all the training stories. So just tell us a little bit. The three of us just bang back and forth. We've got a camera right there. So come on over here.
Go ahead, you start. Okay, I'm going to go first. So I met Jack 33 years ago. My friend, mutual friend, Bud Boyette, who happened to be a childhood friend of mine and my husband's, was acquainted with Jack and had started reining and breaking horses. And so someone owed me $600. And instead of paying me that debt, they offered me this 2-year-old filly. And like a fool, I'm like, well, you know, why not? Well, then it turned out my husband talked to Bud, and Bud said, bring her over, you know, and I'll start her and all that stuff. That's when I met Jack. And that's when it started. I went to a clinic. I think Debbie went to a clinic too. Went to a clinic, and I was terrified. Because I'm like, this person's a legend. He's done it all. Another friend of mine said, no, at one time he didn't know how to ride. And I go, oh, that's not true. No, there's no way. He came out of the womb ready to go. So anyway, I went, and it was horrible. I couldn't get the correct lead. The horse was young, but he took a liking to the horse and to me, and so I stuck with it and eventually went in Green Rainer, and we had a goal, and that was for me to graduate before I draw Social Security, and I did. And so it just went on. We were best friends, and he was always a mentor to me. I called him if I had a question. He was always there. He would come up and stay at our house, and we went on trips together, and he was just a blessing. That's how I met him. So 33 years, and we both wound up drawing Social Security. So
Yes, we did. I met him, and I never did go back and calculate the years, but it's somewhere between 33 and 37. It's been a very long time. And I, too, had a young horse. Should never have had a young horse. Didn't have horses. Didn't know anything about him, but he was pretty, really pretty. And he was a black and white paint. And I was like, oh, look, this is advertised. I'm going to go do this. And then I called him and said, okay, so I've never ridden the horse. He's 3. He's a little on the slight side, but I've done a lot of groundwork with him. And of course, Jack, what did he say? Bring him. And I was like, okay, are you sure I'm going to be way behind everybody else? No, just bring him. And I did, and he worked with them, and it was an unbelievable experience, and it was just the beginning of a long journey riding horses. And the horse was never intended to be a reiner, though he made it as much of a reiner as he could. And one day he said, okay, we're going to go to a reining. And I said, okay. It was the February Classic. We pull in, there's 400 horse trailers, there's all these fancy horses, and it was like, oh my goodness, what have you done to me? And then that was the beginning of the journey. It was an experience, learned a lot. He told me to go and scribe for the judges, to learn even more of what they're looking for, and he just gave unbelievable wisdom all throughout the journey of being a trainer for me and being a friend and a mentor.
I hope you don't mind. I'm going to sit down in between. I had a knee replacement, and then I fell Wednesday and hyperextended it, so I'm going to stay off of it as much as I can. But my first thinking is I live just a little over 2 miles, 2.2 miles. I actually checked it this week from Jack's house, and then it was 1.1 miles to Peace Valley Ranch. How many of you knew about Peace Valley Ranch? Ed Rogers and Joker Traveler. That was the team back then. Traveler was the high sign before high sign. I mean, they had to retire him because people wouldn't go to the app shows. And the App Association wasn't that big back then, and Ed Rogers became president of the App Association. Well, that was 3 miles from my house, and they had a 4-H horse club. Well, here's this 14-year-old watching this 31-year-old Jack Hennig ride horses. And that was kind of course, you can't teach a 14-year-old nothing. I didn't care what he could do. But I actually had the pleasure of roping some calves off a Traveler one time, and that was probably the highlight of my horse career with them. But we're going to open mic. You just tell your stories. They're going to run mics. I'm going to sit down. Just hold it close to your mouth. Thank you.
And we know you have stories. So raise your hand and we'll come and let you talk about them.
Raise your hand for the next one so we can get the next mic ready.
One thing that Jack told me when I got my new horse 6 years ago was I was saying how great the horse was because you could saddle him up when you haven't been on him for a year and he won't do anything. You just get on him and go. I says, but what he will do is when I saddle him up and put him in the round pen, he bucks. And Jack said, don't lunge him in the round pen with a saddle on because that's going to teach him to buck with a saddle. So that was the best thing he ever did for me.
So I knew Jack and was really involved with Jack in youth. I'm a 32-year 4-H leader with the state of Florida, University of Florida. And when I first saw him live, it was him and Bud Boyette, and they were doing demonstrations for the judging competition at the state fair. You could count on seeing them every time we went. they were doing a reining class, and they'd bring another couple, and they'd put that class on. So that was when I first saw him live. And then I had a boarding training operation, and I had a lady that showed up there, and some of you may know her, Janine Ryan. She was crazy about Appaloosas, and the next thing I knew, she was talking about Jack. And I went up to Ocala and saw him with High Sign at a festival of some sort at OBS. They were having some kind of a festival. And so I got to chat with him a little bit. And then I had acquired a Go Man Go horse. So it's really not a reiner, but he got me started. And I used to call him and talk to him before I got him where he was ready to go to a trainer. And people used to ask me, how the hell did you get that man on the phone? We called him morning, noon, and night. There were no cell phones then. And I said, well, I called him in the morning at breakfast time, and I called him at lunch because Miss Shirley feeds him lunch, and I have no trouble getting a hold of him. But that is how I first got going with him. He came to my place and gave umpteen kids lessons, worked with their horses, worked with my horses. He was really something. And George, you got a child, Daniel, over at the show this weekend that just won, and he actually taught him how to rope. So there was no 4-H child in Florida that had a better friend.
Amen.
I guess I go back with Jack since, I can't remember if it was 1982 or 83, when we first started the Reining Horse Association. I think that's when it was, wasn't it? 82, 83? Yeah, this age. If it didn't happen last week, I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, back in the day, always watched Jack. I didn't have a horse, and always watched Jack at the shows that we had cause we had shows with the affiliate horse clubs. We couldn't afford to have it at a big show or a cover arena. During the lunch break, paint show, app show. It was an incredible start. But look how big we are now, or we became. Anyway, I didn't get my horse until 1976. I'm sorry, 86. And that was a reining horse that I bought from Dick Pieper, trained by Dick Pieper. He was an incredible horse, but I wasn't an incredible rider. I was just learning. And we went to a show in Marianna, Florida. And as luck goes by, I was the first one up. I couldn't even see the pattern run by anybody, so thank God I knew the pattern. Of course, I messed it all up. So on my way out, Jack was standing at the entry gate where I was coming out at, and he told me, don't worry, Eddie, you just got to practice a little more. Meanwhile, my chaps were broken, and they were falling down. I almost fall on my face. That was the first time that we really had talked. After that, I talked to him at every show. Every time we had a clinic, I would go. He did a clinic in our house for a gentleman named Paul Hartsfield that bought a horse from him, and the horse colic at the show and had to have colic surgery. And Jack did a free clinic at my house for him so he can have enough money to pay for everything. That's the way Jack was. He needed the money, but he still donated all the proceeds to him. That's the kind of person he was. And throughout the years, I became better, and of course, I watch him every time. And I told him this at his birthday last year, that I didn't ask him a lot of questions, but I pay attention. And I was good about paying attention and picking stuff up. It's sad that he's gone, but anyway, the following year, I won that show. So I really paid attention and worked hard, and Jack came out and congratulated me and said, that's what you got to do, you just got to keep riding. So you're not going to win them all, but you just keep at it and eventually you will. Anyway, that's my story.
And you're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Y'all keep your hands raised up so we can keep a mic at you.
Yeah. I know some of you here, some I don't. My name's Marvin Stone. This place goes way back for me. I started right out here in a pair of penny loafers and Sansa pants, and that's no joke. Let's go for a trail ride. Are you kidding me? I did. I went for a trail ride and ended up on my ass out there, knocked out. I was knocked out. Knocked out. That's my horse. That's the start of my horse story. And in some ways it got worse. Then it got really good. Went to a clinic of his, and here we go. Same thing. But my story is I was chasing the buckle. And Marvin, we got to go to Dixie National. They got a big horse show out there, and we got to go out there, and we got to go for it. I said, okay, fine. Well, the bottom line, I found out later that he had a horse that needed to get some points, and he needed to go out there. What he needed to do, it was a ride. I was his ride, okay? That's what I found out. But, I mean, he was my man. I really didn't know what I was doing, but he was my man, So, typical Jack, let's leave early if we're going to get out there now. Let's leave early. Yeah, well, Marvin got this horse coming on training, these people don't know. We leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that's not a good time to leave because I get out, I drive. We get out to Dixie National. I said, I don't know anything. I said, Jack, what hotel we got? Now I woke him up. You got to understand that. I said, what hotel we at? We're here. Oh, Marvin, you didn't get a hotel? I said, no, I didn't. I thought, you're in charge. I'm not. Hell, I'm just here. He said, oh, drive up here. I always stay here. They know me. Don't worry about it. They know me. Now, this is Dixie National. This is a big horse show, guys. I mean, you got to make reservations, okay? I pull up. I get out. I go in. This one young girl was behind. I says, hey, I'm Marvin Stone. You have a room. She looked at me like I was, what? I said, yeah, I need a room. She went, there's no room. We've been sold out for months. This is Dixie Nationals. I said, well, I don't know what to do. I come up here with my trainer, and another town? Is there someplace we can go? She said, oh, man, this thing's been sold out forever. Because they had Dixie National was a quarter horse show, and then they had an Appaloosa show right after, and it was a huge, huge show. I look up behind this young girl. There was a mural on the wall, and it was Jack riding a horse. I said, well, I don't know. You see that guy right there in that mural? She said, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know him. I said, well, he's sleeping in my back seat, for God's sake. Could you have a room? Not only did we get a room, we got a suite. It only had one bed in it. I look at Jack and said, Jack, you go ahead. I'll sleep on the couch. I'm good with that. But at that show, I realized at that show what a legend this guy was. He was the real deal. None better. How many world championships did he win?
Over 50 on high sign.
I mean, who does that? Who does that? This guy could ride a monkey. And you know what? I think he'd rather ride a monkey. He was the cowboy that would take the horse that nobody else wanted, and he'd go out and show him. All these other cowboys, these trainers, they will, and he'd go out and get it done. And it may not look pretty sometimes, but he got it done. He's a legend. No doubt about it. I'm blessed to have been associated with this man. He's awesome.
Thanks, Marvin.
Very few were ever the horse trainer he was and a cowboy.
Yep.
The guy could rope a calf and rope a steer, let me tell you.
Well, that's another. I got another story about that. You want to hear it? I could tell
Who's next? We got one over here.
Oh my God.
And we all have to remember that the one thing he said he wanted to do when he got to heaven was rope cows again. Yes, and to calf rope specifically, because that was his love.
Hi, my name's Anne Marie, and I'm just want to bless God for letting Jack salt and pepper my life when it comes to horses. I first met Jack at Cowboy-up Ministry when we were at Lithia Pinecrest, and I saw his first, and this was back in 2013, and I watched him in amazement when he did his demo. And when it was over, I went up to him and said, I want to have a lesson. I don't have a horse, but I want to have a lesson. And he said, give me a call. We'll schedule something at Winding Trails Ranch. And so my first lesson was glorious, which I'll never forget. I rode his horse, Bay Boy. Anyone knew him? And I was just a rider where I just knew you kicked, held the reins and kicked. And by the end of that lesson, I had done my first spins, my first sliding stops, and my first flying lead change. And I was in heaven. I was happy. I'll never forget that day. Well, let's jump back to 1997 because I find this very interesting. My youngest sister, her first horse, I think she was 13 at the time, got into horses, and my dad and her trainer went somewhere, don't know where, out here somewhere, because we were in Largo, and they came back with her first horse, whose name was Time to Get High. Her sire was High Time, which was also the sire of High Sign. Not that I knew anything, but in retrospect, what an incredible small world. So now let's jump to 2023. I started at boarding at Winding Trails Ranch. There was Jack, and I was like, yahoo. So I resumed my lessons with him. But really, more importantly, I had countless conversations with him. And it was, I'll just cherish them all. Because he made me a better horse woman. So here we are today. I'm still at Winding Trails, but everyone that works there wanted to come today, but they are having what they call the Top Hand Challenge. It's a youth rodeo. If you know any youth, that's something they should check into and get involved with. So everyone's working and they can't be here today at this celebration. But there's a gentleman there. We sat down and he asked me to say a few words for him. His name is Caesar. He's been at Winding Trail since 2015. And he told me that Mr. Jack was starting to work with a young wild mare named Frosty. Caesar and Jack, they had to work together to even catch Frosty when she was young. And Caesar learned so much about horses from Mr. Jack. Now, after all the years of Mr. Jack riding Frosty, she comes right up to the gate, puts her nose into the halter, and is just excited to go into the barn, get saddled up. I watched him ride Frosty, and he was still like butter riding. So, back to Caesar. Caesar says Mr. Jack was a wonderful person and a good friend and taught me so much about horses. So happy to meet a person like Mr. Jack. So sad for me when he was going. We were really good friends. Caesar was the one that saddled up Frosty. But other than that, he got off. But his last ride, he couldn't get off. Caesar remembers, and Caesar helped him get off. And Caesar remembers Mr. Jack saying, I won't stop riding until I can't get on a horse anymore. Caesar will remember Jack the rest of his life.
Who's next?
My history, I have a loud voice. I don't really need a microphone. So my history with Jack doesn't go back.
You need it
quite
for
as-
the Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Doesn't go quite as back as everybody else's. Maybe about 8 years ago, I was looking for a horse and I spotted one on Facebook and kept calling. It wasn't in my price range, but they said, well, come on down and try the horse out. So I wrangled my friend Nancy and Jack to go with me to go look at this horse. And we were going down to the Roebucks to look at a horse. So we get down there, and I had told Bobby Joe that I was bringing my trainer. Well, Jack gets out of the truck, and she's like, that's Jack Hennig. And I said, yeah. I mean, I still wasn't quite aware of who my trainer was at that time. And she's like, I didn't know you were bringing Jack. And I said, well, I told you I was bringing my trainer. She's like, I have to make some calls here. So she started making phone calls and made sure that everybody knew Jack was on property. Anyways, we test rode the horse, and Jack rode her first, and Bobby Joe rode her, and then I rode her, and we hung out for quite a few hours after that. They just adored having him there. It was a real special treat. And at this point, I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. This man he's a legend, and he's my trainer. So anyways, we started driving home, and Jack said, if you like her, go ahead and buy her, and I'll go pick her up, and I'll keep her for a couple weeks. And his saying, I don't know if he said it to all the horses, but I'll keep her and get the junk out of her. And he kept her for 2 weeks and probably rode the pants off of her. And then when he delivered her, we were at Ted's when I got her, and then Lily went to Nancy's, and Nancy kept her for a couple weeks. And then I would have my weekly lessons with Jack, and I would never really get to ride my horse. Jack was on Lily more than I was, and my mom at the time, she would say, did you get a chance to ride? I'm like, no, not this time. And then I'd have another lesson, and my mom would ask, did you ride? I'm like, no, he's working with her. So it was a good while before I started to ride her, and I still have the horse, and every day I'm reminded of the story of how I got her.
Hi, I'm Kathy Boger. My husband Carl wrote something on Facebook for him. I hope I can get through this. So Carl says, yes, I was told if he ever touched his cap, he was a little bit frustrated with you. By the end of his lesson, Jack had a firm grip on the bill of his hat and wasn't letting go. He says, so far I've never met a better horseman and a genuinely nice man. Thank you. Good job.
I don't think I ever heard the word trainer and friend put together more than Jack Hennig. Because not all trainers are your friend.
I didn't have you in mind, George. I've been through them all, though. You gotta know that, right?
Okay.
Who's up?
Hi, my name's Kelly. Jen and I, about the same time, started riding with Jack. Thank you, Nancy. Because if it wasn't for Nancy, I wouldn't have. You think you got it, you don't. So, flying lead changes. So I wanted to show trail and get in the Western, the rail class, the whatever I could. But anyway, if you didn't know how to do a lead change, Kathy, we rode together with him over at Ted's. There was a little group of us, Nancy, Jen, I think Tanya was over there once or twice, but boy, looky here. I'd get my lesson in. I did get my lesson. After that, my horse was gone for like 5 hours. He rode Peppy the whole time. And I just sit and watch. But thank God for Jack. I miss him. I know everybody has some good stories. I don't go that far back as a legend, but I won't forget him.
Amen.
So, my name's John Clay, and Mr. Jack rode horses for my dad in '67 and '68 at West Palm Beach. I think the NRHA wasn't here yet, so the App Association had junior reining and senior reining, and he was taking a horse of my dad's over there. So I grew up looking at all the trophies Jack won for my dad, and when I was about 12, my dad sent me, I didn't go to camp, I went to Jack's. And I spent a week with him, and I got the right high sign. And then fast forward to January '94, and that day, and got driving story going to the Dixie National.